up at my home, I live on the Ohio River. And oh, I just love water. And there was a little boy that lived down in the city, and he went to a church, and he's a fine little lad, and he said to his mother one day, he said, "Mother, I want to ask you a question." Said, "I hear the preacher talk about God being so great," and said, "Now, I just wonder if anybody could ever see God." Why, she said, "Honey, you asked your Sunday school teacher." Said, "Mother couldn't answer that. I don't know nothing about it." And so they asked the Sunday school teacher, and she said, "Oh, I wouldn't know about that. You ought to ask the pastor." So he went and asked the pastor, and the pastor said, "No, sonny, no man can see God. No man can see God and live. You just can't do it." So the little fellow was disappointed. He associated with an old fisherman and lived on the river, and one day they was up around close to, pardon me, the 6 Mile Island, and they come up a storm. Excuse me. And they come up a storm, and the waters, you know how it gets after the rain, the leaves are all washed off. The old fisherman got back out in the boat and started down the river pulling his boat. Just as an oarman or any boatman knows the harmony of that tip of the wave on the oars like that is he bringing down, is pulling a box of fish behind. And there was a sun come out in the west over this way and was looking towards the east. The old fisherman was, and there come a rainbow across the skies. And the little fellow was sitting in the stern of the boat. And so he began to notice the old fisherman with his gray beard, tears began to run down his cheeks as he looked at that rainbow going along. And the little fellow got enthused, and he ran up to the center of the boat, he grabbed the old fisherman by the knees and fell down there at his feet. He said, "Sir, I'm going to ask you a question. My Sunday school teacher, my mother, my pastor, no one could answer. Could anybody see God?" And the old fisherman, so overcome, he just pulled the oars in the boat, threw his arms around the little boy. He said, "God bless your little heart, honey. All I've seen for the past 50 years has been God. There's so much God on the inside of him. Everything he looked at was God. That's how you see God, is when you get God inside of you. Let him look through your eyes. That's how you'll work for God. When God can use your hands, use your feet, use your lips, use your tongue, use your ears, use your eyes. God in you sees God on the outside. God is in his universe. He was in the rainbow, settled a question there that none of them could settle. I'm a hunter, as you all know. My mother's a half Indian. And in my conversion, never taken that out of me. I still go up into Colorado where I'm a licensed guide. And I every fall and go way high in the mountains where I used to herd cattle for years and sat there many times, learned so much about God. I remember sitting there, my leg across where the Hereford Association grazes the Troublesome River Valley, watching the ranchers as we bring in the cattle, putting them up in springtime to herd. And here's one thing, reason I'm interdenomination. The ranger stood there at the drift fence, and he watched those cattle. If you can raise a ton of hay on your ranch, will produce as many tons of hay, it'll put a cow on the forest. I guess you still had the same laws here. And then the rancher standing there, watching those cattle, he never paid very much attention to what brand they had on them. Ours was a tripod, and the other man above us was turkey track, and just above there was Grimes, the big outfit that had the bar, diamond bar, and some of them put hundreds and hundreds of head of cattle on there. But you know, that ranger never noticed them brands. He watched for the blood tag in the ear. You couldn't put a Hereford on that forest or a cow on that forest without being a thoroughbred Hereford. It had to be a registered Hereford. And I think at the day of the judgment, God will not notice whether I belong to the Assemblies or the Church of God or what church I belong to. The brand that I wear, he'll look for the blood tag, the blood of his own son. That's what he will look for. Nothing will go in there but a born-again Christian.